Hey, welcome back to BUFORD PUSSER, the other story. Now, you're on the YouTube channel where we tell the true story of Sheriff Buford Pusser, not the fictional version that you saw in the movie Walking Tall or any of its sequels. And it's certainly not the story that W.R. Morris told in his book, The 12th of August, or it doesn't follow along with the writings of perhaps Robert Broughton, who also wrote fictional accounts of the sheriff's life. Now, we pride ourselves here on trying to reach the real story. I've done a lot of investigating of this story over the years, so much so that it aided in leading to the TBI reopening an investigation into the death of Pauline Pusser, the sheriff's wife. So I must say that I get an opportunity to go to McNairy County quite often. I see things that are there. I tend to take that for granted, and I realize that you don't see it the same way I do. I'm there. I see it in 3D. A lot of you have never been to McNairy County before, and when we tell about these things, you have no idea what situations really look like. So today, we're going to back up and take a fresh look at an old story, the death of James Dickey, and how he died. Now, I will tell you up front that a lot of people, including myself, believe that he was possibly murdered. It's one of those stories that has a lot of moving parts. It's a little bit difficult to understand, so it might be good if you went back and watched some of the previous videos so you'll understand it better. But today, what you're going to see is a video of traveling down the highway that James Dickey did when he was killed just prior to the election, which aided Buford in being elected sheriff, as incumbents usually win the race. So I'll tell you what we're going to do now is just go straight to the state line and start covering it from there. Now, there are a lot of stories about things that happened down here at the state line, and one of those stories includes the death of Sheriff James Dickey, who was the person that Buford was actually running against in 1964 in the race for sheriff, along with another individual that most people have never heard of, George Weatherford. Now, of course, Dickey was killed prior to the election, and some people would have you believe that Buford barely won the election, that a dead sheriff almost beat him. And that's not the case. Now, Dickey was on the take, allegedly, from here at the state line. He and Louise were doing business together, if you will. He took a lot of payoffs to look the other way on a lot of crimes, and this probably included the death of Jack Hathcock. Now, on the morning that Sheriff Dickey was killed, allegedly he was here at the state line at the restaurant, along with Buford Pusser and Towhead White. He was driving a loaner car that day. His patrol car was in the shop for maintenance. And the conversation turned to, who had the faster car? Buford Pusser or James Dickey with that loaner? So they decided to find out. According to W.O. Hathcock, who operated the plantation club here, he said that Towhead was the person to flag them off on a race back towards Selber. So we're going to go down through here so you can see what might have happened. We don't know and may never know what actually took place, but they lined up here at the restaurant and they headed north. They're racing down through here. And wouldn't be long before something would go wrong. Now, in the Walking Tall movie, they showed Sheriff Al Thurman chasing Buford down here. Buford was in a pickup, which was not right.
And the sheriff was not chasing him, but rather racing him, according to a lot of stories. As you can see, 45 was fairly straight down through here. Now, they get down here a little ways, and somehow, for some reason, Sheriff Dickey's car leaves the roadway. Now, record has it that he was in the right lane, that he somehow went to the left, crashed into a tree somewhere down in this area, and died 30 minutes later from his injuries.
If you want to learn the real story of Buford Pusser, you need to get my book, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. It is full of facts and information that you don't get anywhere else. It's the story as told by the people who live their own parts in the real tale. It's full of photographs, documents, lots of interesting things to see, and it pretty well outlines everything from Buford's birth up until the time of his death. Again, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. It's available at both Amazon.com and eBay.
Now, it is interesting to note that Dickey, being a Democrat, it was so close to the election, the Democratic Party decided not to try and replace their candidate on the ballot. So that left the race between Buford Pusser, a Republican, and George Weatherford, an independent. And when the count was done, Buford had won the election by just 288 votes. Now, the story that Pusser almost got beat by a dead sheriff is totally untrue, as records show that James Dickey got 307 votes. And some of those probably were sympathy votes from people close to the family, and some of them may have been votes by people who didn't realize that James Dickey was dead. I mean, after all, back then, there was no internet, there was no cell phone usage, and a lot of these rural people didn't have a way of staying in communication with what was happening. So there you have that.
Well, now you know how Sheriff James Dickey died, but that's only part of the story. You see, James Dickey was a corrupt sheriff himself, so much so that U.S. Attorney H.M. Ray in Aberdeen, Mississippi, was working to get him removed from office. As a matter of fact, when I interviewed Ward Moore, who was coroner at that time and the person to step into the office of sheriff should something happen to the current sheriff, he told me that they'd given him a heads up that Dickey was going to be indicted and removed. Ward took office, but it was not as he expected. He expected it to be when Dickey was removed, not killed in an auto accident. But you also have to think about, would there even be a Pusser legend had Sheriff James Dickey lived? So there's that to dwell on. Just a little food for thought. But again, this is such an interesting story. There are so many twists, turns, things that people don't know. Most people believe the walking tall version, which is so far from the truth. So I just ask you guys to hang in with me, and we'll see if we can help straighten all this mess out for you. Until then, just remember, as I always say, the truth has no agenda. Thanks for being here.